Our previous guest was talking about his thoughts on amnesty for people who've come here to the country illegally. I'll share a couple of things with you about that in just a moment. It's 9:33. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. It's 31. I talked to an acquaintance the other day at a radio station in Fresno, California, who told me now that the population there, estimated of people who are here illegally, is well into the 40% range. Ouch. And a lot of California is experiencing that. And of course, if you actually could deport everybody all at once, I guess California would be half empty at this point. I do want to tell people as well that if you're listening to this program, God bless you. But if you're having difficulty listening to this program, may God bless you as well. And we also have a recommendation, and that would be contacting the good folks at Mount Harrison Audiology. February is Heart Month. Here's a tip that you may not have thought of when it comes to your healthy heart. Dr. Christine Pickup of Mount Harrison Audiology is reminding you to have your hearing checked. Include a hearing check as part of your routine physical. Studies show that a healthy cardiovascular system, including heart, arteries, and veins, have a positive effect on your hearing. You can call Dr. Christine Pickup today at Mount Harrison Audiology in Rupert. The number is 312-0957, or you can log on to mountharrisonaudiology.com. Came across a couple of stories this morning while I was sipping my coffee at the desk, and one of the neighborhood cats came in the building and was sitting there keeping me company, eating cat food beside my desk as well. But I was just sitting there doing my morning reading. This is from the Daily Signal. The sneaky way Obama White House is making it look like fewer illegal immigrants are skipping court dates. It says 4 out of 10 illegal immigrants never show up for their court hearings. That's according to Brandon Judd. He spells that like the singer Ashley, right? Judd, or she's an actress too. President of the National Border Patrol Council, which represents Border Patrol agents. This shows that the Department of Homeland Security, the DHS, has disregarded the rule of law as it prioritizes its own administrative policies over current immigration law. And the writer goes on to say, DHS has changed its policy. This new policy requires U.S. Border Patrol agents to release an illegal immigrant from custody as long as he or she has not been convicted of a felony crime and claims to have continually resided in the U.S. prior to January 2014. How do they know this? Well, you just ask them. Have you lived here a long time? Oh, yeah. I guess it might be C. And then the writer goes on to say, many removable illegal immigrants are simply released into the U.S. Second, such policies make it appear as though fewer illegals are skipping their court hearings than actually are. After all, if they are never instructed to show up at court, Homeland Security and the Department of Justice do not have to account for them as absconders. So a sneaky way to try to bring more Democrats into the United States. I was reading this morning another piece about what would happen if every illegal immigrant in New York City was allowed to vote. Well, Bill de Blasio is about as far left wacky as you get. But if every illegal immigrant in New York City was allowed to vote, because they have such strong numbers there, they would obliterate the rest of the state. If you've ever pulled out a map of New York State, I grew up a 9-hour drive from New York City. And I lived in New York State. And I still, if you wanted to drive to Erie, Pennsylvania, you still had to drive about an hour and a half west. So that's how big certain parts of New York State are. It's like saying, if New York City were Coeur d'Alene, it'd be like people saying to us when we were from Idaho, they'd be like, you're from the big city. But I'm telling you right now, so many people live in New York City, so many illegal aliens, that literally every state office, well, I realize you're thinking Chuck Schumer and people like that. They may already have been taken over by Marxist-Leninists, but they would literally hold every office for good, and they would be voting for all that free stuff that they keep getting promised by the American left. 9:38. We have a caller with us. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX.
You know, Bill, I keep hearing about everybody talking about this forced removal of people. I don't know how you feel and everything else, but I think if we would just enforce the laws that we already have on the books and maybe create some kind of an e-verify or something like that where we could find the people with the illegal or false documentation, you wouldn't have to deport them. They would deport themselves because they would have no job, they would have nowhere to go, and they would be looking over their shoulder every second of every day waiting to get caught. And let's not make this sound like it's just the Mexican border, because we know that people fly in with visas saying they're going to go to school, and they disappear before they even finish their first quarter.
Sure.
And and so it's everything. It's illegal aliens is not one gender or person or anything. It's the whole gamut, and it's killing us. Imagine if 40% of California would disappear. Other than jobs being a problem, they wouldn't have a water problem.
They wouldn't have a water problem, and they'd have full employment. I thank you much for I thank you much for the telephone call. It's coming up on 20 minutes away from 10 o'clock. A couple of ways we don't need a wall. All you need to do is put in some machine gun nests, fly a lot more drones overhead. Drones are now cheap. And bring a few more officers in. First of all, if you fired a few 50 caliber rounds across that border or at the border if someone was crossing illegally, the crossings would stop, and a lot of other people would self-deport just out of fear. We've got more coming up on this topic in just a few minutes on KLIX. There are 2 U.S. congressmen who came out yesterday and said that they are now endorsing Donald Trump in his quest to be the Republican nominee for president. This is the first time any really big-name Republicans in government have come out and done that. One is Chris Collins. Chris Collins is the former Erie County executive. That means he's from Buffalo. But he was a very successful one. On the other hand, since getting elected to Congress, it has become apparent that government has helped him build his businesses. He's very much in support of things like the Export-Import Bank and free trade and the like. He's grown fat off of corporate welfare. So some people are saying, well, discount his recommendation. On the other hand, Congressman Duncan Hunter, who is a legendary figure in California, had been mentioned all the way back in 2008 as a potential candidate for president, did not run or did not make a serious effort at it. Hunter, extremely popular, considered to be a very honest man, extremely popular as a Republican conservative, member of the House of Representatives in Washington. He says that he is backing Trump because of Trump's stand on illegal immigration. He made an appearance with Greta Van Susteren on FNC's, that's Fox News Channel's, On the Record.
I was a Huckabee supporter. I supported him through Iowa until he withdrew. 3 things, really, Greta. Three things: national security, border security, and manufacturing and trade. I mean, those are the 3 main things he talks about. I'm from San Diego. We have one of the only secure borders in the nation. We have a double border fence with a high-speed road in San Diego. It has stopped international crime. You can't move back and forth now between Mexico and the U.S. if you're a bad guy. So we have the border fence in San Diego. Number 2, I did 3 tours overseas, 2 in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. My son should not have to go serve where I served in Iraq. And I trust that Trump will make our military stronger, and he'll make it so either we don't have to use it, or when we do use it, we will absolutely crush and destroy the enemy. Number 3, manufacturing and jobs. He understands the way that China cheats. He understands the way that other countries cheat on trade. And he understands that we've lost millions of manufacturing, great jobs in this country. And I think he knows how to bring them back. So those are 3 simple things. He's not a policy wonk. He's a leader, and I think we need a leader as president, not a policy guy.
It's 9:46. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story. News Radio 1310, KLIX, newsradio1310.com, 34. That was Duncan Hunter. He's from the House of Representatives, serving in Congress from the San Diego, California area. And he was talking, at least in the beginning of that clip from Fox, about the issues with illegal immigration in this country. Now, I have an email. This comes in from my friend, Lieutenant Colonel Steve Heil. If you were with us a couple of weeks ago, you heard the Colonel speaking with us about his time when he served as the administrator of the Shuttle Challenger Commission. And he has a long, long government resume, including his 20 years with the U.S. Air Force. He sends this along this morning. $11 billion to $22 billion. We can't get an accurate estimate on this. This is talk about things that frost your cookies. Is spent on welfare that is given to illegal aliens every year by state governments. $22 billion a year is spent on food assistance programs such as food stamps or WIC and free school lunches for illegal aliens. $2.5 billion a year is spent on Medicaid for illegal aliens. How about this one? $12 billion a year is spent on primary and secondary school education for the illegal aliens, and they cannot speak a word of English. 5, he writes, $17 billion a year is spent for education for American-born children of illegal aliens known as anchor babies. Number 6, $3 million a day is spent to incarcerate illegal aliens. 7, 30% of all federal prison inmates are illegal aliens. 30%. 8, $90 billion a year is spent on illegal aliens for welfare and social services by the American taxpayers. Number 9, $200 billion a year in suppressed American wages are caused by illegal aliens. Number 10, this is a list of facts that is just incredible. In 2006, illegal aliens sent home $45 billion in remittances to their countries of origin. Number 11, the dark side of illegal immigration, nearly 1 million sex crimes committed by illegal immigrants in the United States. There is a book that has been put out, speaking of former guests on this program, Phil Kent. If you go to philkent.com, and Phil, it's all one word, Phil, P-H-I-L, and Kent, K-E-N-T, philkent.com, you'll see one of his books. It's called The Dark Side of Liberalism, and it focuses on many of these problems. Phil wrote that book 10, 12 years ago. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. When I was living on the eastern shore of the Chesapeake Bay, we had a lot of canneries and chicken plants, which, as you know, are staffed by a lot of people who perhaps are not here legally. But wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Nobody pays any attention from the government side. I had a friend who actually worked at one of those plants, and he told me, he said, what they do is if they get a tip, and this will often happen, someone will tip them off that a government inspector is coming by. The illegal aliens are then told, come in for the third shift. In other words, come in and work 11 o'clock at night till 7 in the morning. And then because government people aren't going to come out on them. They're not showing up at 3 a.m. You know how this works? I had a friend of mine, he was a radio engineer. He said when the FCC guys would come out and do their radio inspections, they would come out in the middle of the day. They would drive out from Columbia, Maryland, cross the Chesapeake Bay, come out and drop by a couple of radio stations, inspect the files, and then spend the next 2 days in Ocean City, Maryland, that's on the coast of the Atlantic, fishing. They'd come and they'd charter a boat, and so on their way out, they'd pop in a couple of radio stations and say, we're from the FCC. And then they'd shake down some people at the radio station, then they'd move out and go fishing for a few days. These guys who were coming out also to check on the illegal immigrants working potentially in all of these chicken plants and canning places, they're just showing up as well. They do a perfunctory visit at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then they go down to Ocean City and they get gassed in one of the local bars. Then they go out and spend the next day fishing. So everyone knows the game and how this is done. And on top of that, my local county seat, I had a friend working at the Postal Service. He was working at the local post office, and he would tell me that these illegals would go to the local food banks, empty out the food banks, because a food bank doesn't deny anyone. Generally, these are set up by churches or by good-hearted people who really are trying to do the right thing. And someone comes in and says, I'm hungry. You don't say, turn around and leave. So they would come in and they would collect, just masses of canned goods and dried goods, and they would leave. Then they would go back to the post office and they would mail all of that stuff down to Guadalajara. Your local church comes to you and says, we've got people hungry in this community. And so you donate, you give generously, you provide for that food bank, and then these people come along and they just loot it. That's basically what they're doing, and they ship it overseas. You're never told that. You're thinking you're helping the guy down on the corner who's down on his luck. That's how that's working. It's theft. It's theft. I remember a priest one time telling one of my buddies at church that we had to be, better stewards of our neighbors and look out for our brothers and sisters. And my friend said to the priest, can I come over to the rectory and raid your refrigerator? And the priest said, well, no. And he said, well, what's the difference? We have to have somebody put some sanity back into all of this. 952, Bill Colley. And this country is $20 trillion in debt officially. the numbers could be well over 100 trillion. And we told you yesterday, by 2026, 10 years from now, the average household in this country will be on the hook for $200,000 of that debt each. We're going to hell in a handbasket, and yet Lefty out there says, well, why not? You're on the air. You're up next on KLIX.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I see. Like, for instance, yesterday I had a Hispanic gentleman come up to me on a job site, and what I do for a living, he wanted me to come over to his house and examine that, and I did. And he is legal. He aspires to the American dream. And in the past, I've asked these Hispanic legals who really are Americans, who want to do what we do, be what we are, and have what we have. And but when you ask them how they feel about illegal immigration, they kind of clam up. And I guess in their social network, there's pressure, and you don't go against it, so to speak. I guess I don't know. You say to yourself, wouldn't they be just as mad at illegal immigration as I would? They are doing the same thing I'm doing. I don't know, Bill, but that's just my comment, and I'll hang up.
Hey, thank you. And I'm glad you mentioned that. I knew a fellow who came here from Mexico in 1979, and he did it the right way. He applied and became an American citizen. Now he runs a business. He is just absolutely beside himself that people would come here and abuse this system. I have another friend from Peru. He came here to run a restaurant. He did it the right way. He became an American, loves the country. He feels the same way. And yet they look around and they just think that if I did it the right way, why should I have bothered? Because everybody else is getting away with breaking the law. And if you eventually build a country where breaking the law, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, is everyone's doing it, so why not? Then after a while, you have no respect for the law. You've got no respect for any institutions any longer. Your politicians appear to be all crooks. Everybody else seems to be on the take. After a while, no one will bother any longer. Everyone will, the old stories about the Soviet Union before it collapsed, about all the people who were dealing on the black market and under the table. Well, that's one of the reasons the place came crumbling down. But everybody knew it was corrupt. That's how everybody got by. Someday and how do you teach your children about what's right and wrong then? How do they have any respect for that when they see that it's all about just getting what you want and climbing over everybody else to get it no matter what the rules are? 9:55. You're up next with Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
Good morning, Bill. I live down here in Burley, and I've lived here all my life, and there's a lot of Hispanics here, and they're good people, some of the best hardworking people, but they're the old school, and it's just not the Hispanics. Half of my relatives are on programs because they're available, and they're pushing them. And there's 3 generations of my relatives that's taking advantage of those because they're there, and they just about force it on you like a credit card.
Yeah.
So it's just they're there. If they weren't there, people would stand up, Bill. I truly believe that. So they have to. Thank you.
He brought up a point. I saw a story a couple of years ago, and I remember I had a co-host at the time, and she came in and she said, "Have you seen this?" And I had seen it, I think, the previous night. And she said, "We got to talk about this today." And it was a story about a young woman. I think she was from Ohio. She was 19 years old. She already had 2 kids. She wasn't married. And she wanted to go to college. So the state said, well, if we just let her, sleep around all day giving her food stamps and popping out more children, well, things are only going to get worse. So what we'll do is we'll ensure she gets a good education so she can go off and get a job. So they paid her way off to college. They helped her find a job through a training program. They provided the child care. I say they, you did. You're the taxpayer. And then they provided the food stamps, the rental assistance, the heating assistance, the cooling assistance, the lighting assistance. And at the end of all of this 19-year-old girl who hadn't been able to keep her pants on and had 2 illegitimate kids, we used to call them little bastards. That's apparently not politically correct any longer. Her income, well, what you were paying her for all of these things amounted to $81,000 a year. Can you imagine that? It's just 81. Yes, but we have to do it because we have to be compassionate. Again, we shared the clip yesterday. The woman with 15 kids is demanding that somebody else pay for them. Judas Priest lady, keep your pants on. I'm not responsible. And yet, we've enshrined this, as our caller just said. I mean, this has become the way we do things. There's no hope left for this country if we don't have a sudden stop to it. And we're going to have to get tough with these people, and we're going to have to learn to say no. And a lot of people are going to be unhappy, and they're going to scream and cry. It's going to be like if you take the bird feeder away from the wild birds. They're not going to be happy for a while. They'll come back and they make crap on your head. But eventually they'll go away and they'll figure out how to do it on their own again. Rush Limbaugh is coming up following the news at 10 o'clock. News from Fox, of course. And then Sean Hannity after 1 o'clock news. There's a big debate tonight among Republicans. They'll both be talking about that. Glenn Beck after 4 o'clock news today. If God willing and the creek don't rise, they'll allow me to come back and do this again tomorrow morning between, 8 o'clock and 10 in the morning. Hope to see you all then.